And here we are once again at the very, very lovely corner of Glenwood and Lunt. We are in the heart of Rogers Park, and we are up on the stage at the Heartland Cafe, where once again, as we do every Saturday morning, we bring you another edition of Live from the Heartland. I am Michael James with
Katie Hogan.
And we are your hosts for this morning's edition, and we have a pretty nice lineup. You know, it is May Day tomorrow. It's a special day around the world. It's International Workers' Day. It originated here in Chicago, where we still have issues that encourage us to support May Day. And on the personal front, tomorrow will mark 35 years since Katie and I and Grandma Jean and David and Chuck and Stormy and Jesse came into this building, which was then Lackey Steakhouse, had just closed up, and we began to tear the place apart and create what is here today as the Heartland Cafe. Let's do it. That's good. We got some fans in the audience this morning. So 35 years ago, we were here, we were inspired, we're still inspired, and we are glad that you have tuned in to Live from the Heartland. In case you're out there in the world on any occasion you can't listen to us live, you know that you can go to youtube.com/heartlandmedia, and you can see our pretty faces as well as those of our guests. So this morning we have a good lineup.
We do indeed. We don't have probably the Jamie O'Reilly I promised you last week. Was my fault. She was actually scheduled to come on this week. I don't think we're going to have her, but I'm going to announce her event a little bit later. We have good friends talking about Global Activism Expo, which is today. Those good friends including Miss Molly Heineman, whose charity has a booth there, and one of her board members, Ms. Marianne Flynn, both of whom I admit are women I love and admire. We also have
Mike Klonsky.
Well, we were going to start with Mike Klonsky momentarily, but after that, stick around for Michael Lynn, who's going to talk about Guns and Bread, the War Economy Comes Home, an event tomorrow, or at Northwestern. An event tomorrow, Sunday, 2 p.m.
A lot of action on May Day.
Yeah, May Day's a big day.
We hope the sun will shine. Actually, the sun is coming out here at the corner of Glenwood and Lunt. Usually we say the very sunny corner of Glenwood and Lunt when we can. And last week was real sunny, and today is supposed to be sunny. It looked like it's going to break through. We hope so. Okay, so our first guest up is an old friend. Actually, this guy and I bonded while we were in the Soviet Union playing baseball with Athletes United for Peace. Before that, we had been at odds in the old political days. But he's my friend for life and one of the most wonderful people I know, Mike Klonsky. Good morning to you, Mike.
Good morning, Michael.
Got to get close to that microphone.
Hey, Michael. Welcome.
Always glad to have an excuse to come up here and get some of those delicious blueberry pancakes and Heartland coffee. I mean, it's a great way to start off a Saturday morning.
We like hearing that. And it is Metropolis Coffee these days, who are our good friends in the neighborhood. Let's say, and they are very supportive of progressive things, too.
Fair trade as well.
Fair trade. Organic.
Michael Klonsky, we haven't probably had a chance to debrief since the mayoral election. I know that you were hard at work trying to wrangle some good vote totals out of folks. And now that we've got our mayor-elect, who actually visited the neighborhood this week, Michael did a fine job of introducing him at Loyola Park the other night. And he's named his team. He's begun to name his team. Education is your game, your main game, along with politics. Tell us what you think of J.C. Brizard and the named folks thus far.
Yeah. Well, my issue is not so much with J.C. Brizard as it is for the way he was chosen. You know, the big problem for me is that we are now living in a time when we have mayoral control of public education. That means one autocratic mayor decides everything. And so J.C. Brizard was chosen to be our new school CEO. That's what we call superintendents here in Chicago, which gives you a clue as to what's going on.
Really?
And he chose, before even being officially the mayor, and before even having a board of education to consult with, he picked J.C. Brizard as a former superintendent of Rochester, and a guy who just seems to be just another teacher basher.
Did he also not name an entire board of education? I mean, didn't he sweep clean the boards and start over again?
Yes, he swept clean the board, but the new board wasn't even in place yet. And so there was absolutely no consultation, even with his board, let alone with the school community, which is where the discussion should take place. And as a result, I don't think the new CEO was vetted properly. It turns out this is a guy with 3 federal lawsuits, civil rights lawsuits pending against him, and a guy who 95% of the Rochester teachers took a vote of no confidence. In other words, you and I, Katie, you're a teacher. You know that trying to get 95% of teachers to agree on anything is impossibility.
Really?
That's probably because a lot of them are Democrats.
Well, Broussard is a Democrat, and it's important to remember, Mike, that the things coming down on teachers here in Chicago, the kind of teacher bashing that's going on and depriving teachers of their collective bargaining rights, tenure rights, and things like that. It's being done. It's not being done by Tea Party Republicans. It's coming down from the Democratic machine here in Chicago, and that's why it was so important that we tried to elect a guy like Miguel del Valle, which I know Katie, was out front in that campaign. But now, whatever, for better or worse, we have Rahm Emanuel, and I think the problem is that there should be no mayor with that much autocratic control over the schools, and the schools should not become just another wing of City Hall. And I guess that's where I'm coming from.
How do you work against that moving into this new day in Chicago? How would teachers face this? Probably stealthily, or somewhat strategically. Anyway,
teachers have a tough road ahead of them. In the recent bill that was passed by the Senate, SB 7, teachers essentially lost 90% of their rights to collectively bargain. It's almost impossible for them to strike anymore because of the new legislation.
Here in Illinois. We're not talking Wisconsin. We're talking right here at home in Illinois.
Yes, exactly. It's not that the teachers union is big on strikes. We haven't had a strike here in 23 years. But with May Day coming up, it's important to understand what's happened to all labor unions in this country. I mean, there's hardly any workers left in the United States that have collective bargaining rights, and so now the real attack is coming down on public employees and especially teachers. And so this Senate Bill 7 really took away a ton of power from teachers and a lot of their rights. And so teachers are kind of being made the scapegoat and being made to bear a lot of the burden of this financial crisis that the country's in right now.
The other night, I do wear another hat as the president of the local Democratic Party, which was a move to my right, I got to admit. But I called together a meeting.
I'm glad you're there, Mike.
I'm glad to be there. And,
we're all glad you're there,
I
Michael.
did, in introducing people that came before the new Mayor Rahm, I did bring up education, and I talked about how teachers are being scapegoated everywhere. And I got to say that I got a lot of response from people afterwards thanking me, but I was also blown away by people who would call themselves liberal Democrats, who basically are real critical of teachers, and they pointed to the suburbs where the teachers couldn't spell certain things. I mean, I just am blown away. It seems to me that most teachers are wonderful and do a great job. There are obviously a few people that may have tenure, may not be effective, may be outdated, outmoded, but the way this debate is being framed and the way it's being projected as teachers as problematic really blows me away. And I wonder why that is. Is it just propaganda from the right or from the center? What do you think?
I think you're onto something there, Mike. I think it's because of it's really, first of all, it's really not just about teachers. This is about working people, and especially public employees. It's a move to rally tax-paying citizens who are so hard pressed right now to find a scapegoat. and so there's all this propaganda, as you put it, to make it seem like teachers are a bunch of money-grubbing, greedy people who won all these entitlements like a pension.
I wish.
Yeah, I heard at a talk the other day at DePaul where I teach. Somebody got up in the audience and asked the president of the teachers union why teachers should feel entitled to have a pension when other workers have whatever.
Don't. Other workers don't.
Yeah, well, other workers don't. They have they pay for 501s or things like that. And Karen Lewis, the president of the teachers union, gave a pretty good response. She says the question isn't why do teachers have pensions, it's why don't all workers have pensions? And I thought that was a great question. And they've always tried to split people like that. The have-nots. And now the brunt seems to be directed against teachers. And I think you're right, Mike. Of course, in any profession, there's weaker and stronger teachers. The way to deal with that is through professional development and trying to strengthen weak teachers and pair them up with better teachers and get good mentors for them. And also our colleges of education, like the one I teach at, need to improve. But that's no reason to put people out on the street or take away their health benefits or pension and things like that.
Well, one of the things that I noticed in an email recently, it could have been even from you, Mike, that Governor Scott Walker up in Wisconsin really took a gamble in going out on the right fringe, and he created obviously a pretty good issue and format for progressives and liberals and just caring citizens to come out in Wisconsin. And I think in this email it pointed out that over 60% now in Wisconsin are opposed to his practices, and that this whole thing could backfire. Do you care to comment on that and his role in helping give us some issues?
Well, it's horrible what's going on in Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, all over the country. And the thing that upset me the most, I think, was that President Obama and Secretary of Education Arne Duncan remained quiet while this attack was going on. But the good part of it was that Governor Walker in Wisconsin, people say he kicked a sleeping dog, and he kind of woke up the labor movement. And I was up there in Madison a day when there was 150,000 people, mostly union members, Teamsters, and people, members of the Firemen and Policemen's Union, et cetera, marching and rallying against the legislation. And while we lost that battle, the bill was passed. Now I hear that we've gathered enough signatures to recall 6 legislators up there who sided with Walker. So there's some good things happening, and a good pushback here in Chicago too. There's some good fight back going on.
This is the core of my problem with this right now. I'm a daughter of a union president. I come from a union family. The unions, if you're talking about kicking a sleeping dog, my question is, why was it sleeping? Why did it allow for all of the workers who are not covered, who don't have any benefits, net underneath them whatsoever, no pension, no benefits, no health care? Why have we just laid down and let what was organized 20, 30 years ago be the extent of it? And, the union that my dad led was very racist for a long time. One of the trade unions that didn't allow people in. And, when you've got people looking at unions in that way and saying they kept people from those jobs 30 years ago, which was true of the IBEW, they've gotten better since. But there's the struggle, and you and I have talked a little bit about this, but not long, because then I think you'd punch me, Mike, in a friendly way, in a good way. But I think we so disagree when it comes to this. It's like, I remember a couple of years ago when the street laborers went on strike for 3 weeks, making it so our customers could not park for an extra month of our one and only summer season. And you said, yeah, crummy workers going on strike. And I go, well, at least they have jobs. And it was close. I ducked. But seriously, how do we address the fact that we have less than 15% of the people in America, workers in America, ever even having experienced organization, and yet we have a lot of people working their butts off, and still not making it. Somehow there's got to be approach.
Let them talk.
Okay.
Well, first of all, I want to declare my support for the street sanitation workers.
The laborers.
The laborers.
I was for them, too.
Yes, yes.
I was for him.
We're all for them.
You know, if Katie's going to start pulling things out from 30 years ago.
No. That was just a year ago, actually.
Yeah, all right.
Sorry.
Just so you all know, as you get ready to answer, we are listening to WLUW 88.7's live from the Heartland Radio.
But you know, the question you're raising is a tough one, and there's no easy answer to that. I mean, this problem really began decades ago.
Yes.
The attacks by the corporations and the politicians on unions, making it more difficult for them to organize, using racism as a tool to
separate
workers and to keep the union leaders from actually organizing the unorganized, which today are mostly black and Latino workers. I mean, it's all part of this legacy that we have in this country that goes back, since the founding of the country. And labor unions have always been, there's always been a struggle within them over these questions, and it still exists today. But
Samuel
right now,
Gomper's shadow.
But right now, the attacks coming down on teachers' unions is a kind of a last-ditch effort for all workers should be supporting, because it's if the teachers' unions are bust, they're the biggest unions in the United States right now. If they bust the teachers' union, then there's absolutely no chance, no hope for organized labor.
I totally agree with that. And the other part of it is air traffic controllers. You know, it's interesting to bring up that what was the first union busted by Reagan as soon as he got in office?
And in all the coverage on the
no one brings it up.
Sleeping traffic controllers, no one brings up that they got squeezed big time.
Right, the conditions that air
working.
controllers are facing, they're unbearable, and of course people are going to be falling asleep or making mistakes. Yes.
Let me bring up what I think to be is one of the ways that they're trying to bust not only the public sector but the teachers' union, and that is with charter schools. There's a lot of hoopla about the charter schools. Arnie Duncan, who has been criticized by the school he went to, the lab school at the University of Chicago, all those teachers have been critical of him. He's like a big advocate. He helped bring it on here. Obama gives a lot of lip service to it. Here in our neighborhood, we have a charter school, and the teachers did organize there. They did win a labor vote, and they went to the NLRB, and they were upheld, and the school is still fighting it. You know, these are basically what it is private corporations running schools and busting unions and trying to make some kind of profit. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the direction of the charter school movement, even though there are a lot of wonderful people working in them trying to make things better.
Well, you know, I'm the director of the Small Schools Workshop, Mike and Katie, and we actually helped start the first few charter schools in the city of Chicago. And so I'm not an anti-charter school guy, but charter schools at that time meant something different than they mean today.
And they were rarer.
They were teacher-led schools. They were created to create more autonomy for teachers and more power. And what's happened is if you want to know what's happened, they ran headlong into what we call the ownership society. And my wife Susan and I wrote a book about this called Small Schools, Public School Reform Meets the Ownership Society.
We need that book in the Heartland General Store.
Yes, you do. And it tells the story of how charter schools changed from being how they were originally conceived to what they are now, which is essentially privately managed public schools that as you point out, are really been placed in the camp of this corporate kind of reform, anti-teacher reform, and teachers working in charter schools are working under unbearable conditions and trying to unionize, and so it's kind of a cycle that keeps going around.
We're going to run out of time on this segment, but I would like to ask Mike Klonsky, who comes from a family that has long been involved in labor struggles and on the side of justice and human rights.
A wonderful family.
To give us a little bit of a little view on Labor Day. not Labor Day, but on May Day in the year 2011. What do you think is the legacy of the labor movement? What are the challenges, and what are our hopes?
Well, it's amazing. Even the graduate students I teach at DePaul don't know that what Labor Day is, what May Day is. They don't know that it started
Right
almost
here.
down the block from them on Halstead Street and Randolph, where the fight for the 8-hour day took place, so we have a great legacy of struggle here in Chicago, and I started taking my children from the time they were old enough to walk every May 1st out to Waldheim Cemetery, out to see the statue of the Haymarket Martyrs, and now that statue, of course, was vandalized, and there's going to be a big event out there on May 1st tomorrow to raise money and to raise support to get the plaque, the bronze plaque replaced, and they've made a new bronze plaque for it. So I hope everybody comes out with me and my kids and my wife, and the whole Klonsky family will be out there.
Tell them where it is,
to
Mike.
celebrate. It's out on Des Plaines Avenue, right off the Eisenhower Expressway.
Des Plaines and Randolph.
I know how to get there, but I can't give you a good direct. No,
They got Google.
Oh, the cemetery,
We got a
yes.
guy coming up here to tell us how to get there.
Okay.
Paul, how do you get there?
Different. Yeah, got it.
Different event, yeah. There's also going to be
Home Cemetery is.
All right.
All right, we're talking the Forest Home Cemetery.
yes, that's out on Des Plaines, and but there's also going to be the event down at
reenactment.
Haymarket Square,
Which is a reenactment of the Haymarket Rebellion, and that takes place tomorrow at 2 p.m. at Randolph and Des Plaines.
Yes.
no, that's at Randolph and Halstead.
No. Wow.
Okay, today is the 2 o'clock. Today is the 2 o'clock Haymarket
We're kind
Rebellion.
of as disorganized as the labor movement, it looks
Well,
like.
we got a lot of people wanting to participate. That's what I like. So, Mike Klonsky,
More on this in the future, Mike.
Very
We got to
good.
have
yeah,
you
we're
back.
going to ask you to come and give us a regular report on Chicago teachers and
Yeah.
world events, etc. And it's great to be your friend.
And it's mutual, and happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Happy
Let's have a
May
big
Day.
round of applause for Mike Klonsky.
Mike Klonsky. We'll be back again.
All right, we're going to take a short musical break. Eli Sloan is downtown being the in-studio engineer, and he's going to pick us a tune, and we're going to come back with Marianne, Flynn, and Molly Heineman. Molly Heineman, who's been around the Heartland off and on since she was born. Look forward to having you all back in just a couple of minutes. Stay tuned. You're listening to Live from the Heartland on WLUW 88.7, Chicago's Sound Alliance.
And we are back. You're listening to Live from the Heartland. My name's Katie Hogan. My co-host is Michael James. We are celebrating May Day in a couple of different ways. We are celebrating the fact of May Day and also the anniversary that it represents of our beginning of the Heartland Cafe 35 years ago. What is going on right now in front of me is very distracting. Okay, Global Activism Expo 2011. You've heard about this if you listen to WBEZ. Jerome McDonald began the Global Activism series years ago. I don't know how many years ago on Worldview on BEZ. And then he began off of that holding an expo here in Chicago, which I think is a wonderful event. Is it not, Marianne? You've been to it a couple times.
It's a spectacular day for lots of international not-for-profits to not only showcase what they do and tell their stories, but also folks come there who want to volunteer or who want to get involved in different activities. It's a wonderful opportunity.
This was Marianne Flynn, who you just heard. Marianne is a board member of CROSO, which we'll get into in a moment when Molly Heineman opens up her mouth as well. But just for a second, when folks come to the Global Activism Expo, I noticed in their website you can assist by bringing, for example, hygiene kit items and that sort of thing. For the lead on-site volunteer activity is provided by the Hospital Sisters Mission Outreach.
And they have a spectacular booth that where they accept donations, but also demonstrate that the work that they do is incredible in the number of outreaches they've been able to do to make just with people's spare medical supplies. It's fantastic work.
All right, so Molly Heineman, niece of mine. You've heard her before here, folks. She spoke with you, Michael, not that long ago.
Yeah, I have a great picture of Molly when she was a few years younger, and she works with an organization named CROSO.
Yes.
And why don't you fill everyone in on what exactly it stands for so I don't butcher it?
Thanks. So CROSO is Child Restoration Outreach Support Organization.
And you mainly have been working in East Africa.
Yes, we actually focus only in Uganda. We started as a result of, I studied abroad in Uganda my junior year of college and worked with an organization called Child Restoration Outreach, CRO. And we have been born from that. We support the students from that organization. It's all street children, and we support them to go to college, which is an opportunity that wasn't open to them before our organization has helped with that. We currently sponsor 7 students with another one starting this fall, and have actually just been sent new applications. So we'll be reviewing those, and hopefully with some donations, we'll be able to add another student as a result of that.
And where do they go to school? In Uganda?
They all go to school in country. So they're in Uganda, and they're studying different things from law to development to social work. And it's amazing, actually. All of them have chosen to be in careers that continue to develop the country that they're in.
Molly, can you talk a little bit about the CRO organization that is the basis, because it's a real service to these kids?
Sure. So CRO it's a nonprofit that's run by Ugandans in Uganda. It's structured around the fact that they go out on the street, they meet street kids, invite them back to their center, offer them food, offer them counseling, end up getting them involved in school. They consider it a rehabilitation. So they spend a year where they are readjusted to socializing with other youth. They learn how to learn. They have a classroom on site where they learn English, Swahili, a little agriculture, some math, science, and then they go on and are sponsored at the local primary schools.
Why I wanted you to tell that story was that I saw a study recently about the childhood experience of trauma, and how kids who can be positive after that, how they can be contributing adults after that, really only is when kids who've experienced a trauma can connect with a person, can have a mentor or a coach or a teacher, and that's what this organization does. And
Very
then the
much
work
so.
that we've been doing is, once these kids are in our high school age, or we're giving them an opportunity to take the next step. And in many ways, these are a group of kids that are going to be the next set of government leaders, the next set of professors, the next set of doctors and nurses in Uganda. It's
Absolutely.
an incredible opportunity that we're able to provide.
Molly, how many times have you been to Uganda?
I've now been 3 times
Over how many years?
since 2006. So.
And have you seen, Uganda, was a former British colony, and then it had some really rough years. And what's your sense of the country's development, its situation, and how it might have changed over the number of years that you've been visiting?
That's a great question.
That's why I asked it.
So when I went originally in 2006, I think that was my first experience there. That was my first experience in Africa. So that's my baseline. From then, I came back the following summer, and then it was another 2 years after that I went for the 3rd time. So the change that I saw, I have to say, a lot of westernization has occurred. Advertising has, it's true. Advertising has definitely reached Uganda, and it definitely affects the larger cities more than the rural areas. The group that we work with has 4 different centers, but the one that we specifically sponsor students from is in Mbale, which is in eastern Uganda, and it's not a very large town, and so it sort of rides that line of having experienced some of these Western ideas, and people do end up stopping through here as they travel through, but has still maintained a lot of its traditional roots.
I would like to ask both of you, Marianne and Molly, what is the sort of state of volunteerism in the country? As we've seen our government kind of tighten the grip on the money that it's willing to put out for, say, service to the masses. There's this whole thing, what do they call it under Bush? Like
10,000 points of light.
Yeah, 10,000 points of light. What
the
is
original Bush.
What is the state of the 10,000 points of light? Like the people from the private sector and just citizens are going to come forward and try to take care of people in difficult times. I mean, my sense, just to tip my hand, is at a time when we ought to be coming together and helping each other more, people are playing the lottery and kind of looking out for themselves. But that's to the two extremes. What's your sense of where people are at on volunteering and wanting to help?
I can only speak to that very locally. We've had a tremendous response to this work that Molly really has inspired. We have small college-age and post-college-age kids who are making small donations and out of money that they barely have. We have lots of folks that are making major gifts, and we have several folks who have decided to take a hold of one student and make sure that student finishes college and gets on to real work. So I'd have to say locally, we're very, very pleased. Of course, Molly's been a great inspiration. After one of her trips, she came and talked to a group at our church and had a story to tell about a youngster that she knew. You want to tell that story, Molly?
You're talking about George? Sure.
George.
So George. George was a student that I met while I was there. He was 23 years old or 24 years old. And I was doing an interview. It was while I was studying there. So I was doing an interview with him. And one of my questions was, what are your hopes and dreams for the future? And he sort of looked at me and was like, I don't know. And I was thinking, maybe there's some language barrier there. So I rephrased the question like, well, do you want to get married? Do you have a career idea? And he was like, no, I understood the question. I've been accepted to school and I don't have money to go. So if I can't even go to this school that I've been accepted to, how can I tell you what my dreams are for the future? And that hit me like a ton of bricks. And I mean, it just made me aware of all of the opportunities that I've had here. And even without a lot of jobs available here, we have loans that people can access, and that's not something they have access to. So, and that's really where it got started. And so I shared that story when I came back to my church, and people were very responsive to that, and very willing to help.
Marianne, you should co-host the show with us. You do directive questioning very well. You came prepared.
Well, we like guest hosts.
Yeah, we do like guest hosts, and you're invited.
You're one of them
over
today.
the show, babe.
What's your next question?
Well, since you're offering me the mic, I do want to give a little plug to another organization that's appearing at Global Expo.
Just can't mention money.
Okay, no money.
Okay.
A friend of ours is a librarian at New Trier, and she and a lot of her New Trier pals are really focused on building up libraries in Haiti, all of which were destroyed.
Excellent.
They serve not only as libraries but also as community centers and places where kids go to feel protected. So visit their booth number 2 and our booth number 51.
So, Marianne, as somebody who's been to this more than once?
More than once, yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you've always been staffing the booth for Croso?
Oh, and visiting other booths, sure.
So what inspired you on your visits to this? Because I see that they do some great little presentations, like getting kids involved and giving back and some other things that probably
well, I find it very heartening. As a person who worked in a for-profit venture for most of my life, I find it very heartening to go and see other people and be inspired by the work that they do. Lots of folks who really could be sitting at home watching Law and Order reruns are not.
CSI.
Or HGTV in my case.
Are really out there, building libraries or raising money for scholarships for kids in all parts parts of the world. And it's sometimes hard to envision the needs of a world apart from your own, but these folks do. So that's what inspires me.
Yes, that would be inspiring. I would encourage everybody to go. It's today, Saturday, April 30th, noon to 6 p.m. at UIC Forum, which is 725 West Roosevelt Road. It is free. If you've been looking for what you need to get off the dime, get off the couch, and do something
I'd
that
just
makes
like
a
to say,
difference.
too, that Jerome McDonald, who has the show on WBEZ all during the midday, during the week, really has some wonderful interviews. And I always asked one of our producers, Laura Herman, to try to get him to come on this show. And when I heard you guys were coming, I thought maybe he was coming. But you say hello to him from everyone at the Heartland, because he does a great job. And I learn an awful lot by listening to that show. And I would encourage people, whether they do it online, it's called Worldview, to check out Jerome McDonald's stuff, because he's got some really good insights, and he brings some really good people.
Well, we will encourage him to come on the show and take the roof off the place. So
Right on.
okay.
We like that.
We've actually shared guests a few times. I know we're on the right track when I hear a guest we've interviewed a few weeks later on Jerome
And we're
McDonald.
always happy when we've done it first.
Well, yes. And Molly Heineman is one of those guests, actually. Well, thanks for your great inspirational work, Molly, and for your great latching on and support of that and building it, and for your incredible interviewing ability.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for
Thanks a
having
lot.
us.
Let's have a big round of applause for Marianne Flynn and Molly Heineman of Croso. And they will be at booth 51 today at the conference being held down at
Global Activism Expo 2011 at UIC Forum, 725 West Roosevelt Road. We are taking the shortest break, and we
we'll
will be back.
with Mike Lynn.
All right. Live from the Heartland.
I'm going to do a quick briefer report. Here we are. We're back with more Live from the Heartland Radio, brought to you every Saturday morning over WLUW 88.7 Chicago Sound Alliance from 9 to 10 a.m. Central Daylight Time. And I'm Michael James, along with my co-host,
Katie Hogan.
And we are here on the 30th of April. It is, I would have to say, this is our May Day show. For those of you who may have tuned in late, tomorrow, May 1st, will mark 35 years since we came into this building, which was once called Lackey Steakhouse, and began to create the Heartland Cafe. So we're beginning our 35th anniversary year, and we encourage everybody to show up and have a great time whenever they're here. I wanted to make a couple of announcements that I think are of importance to all of our listeners out there. And the first would be on May 7th will be the vote in the 49th Ward on participatory budgeting. So that's next Saturday. Everybody get ready. You should check out the Alderman Joe Moore's website. You can find that, and you can get information about participatory budgeting, which he and our ward have been a vanguard in, out in the forefront of something that's starting to click around the country. And all of you in the ward should make sure you vote next week. Do you want to do a quick reefer report?
No, I don't. You know more about the reefer than I do.
The report is this. It's very simple. I got this from NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. A couple of headlines. Legislation to allow for medical use of cannabis reintroduced in Pennsylvania Senate. Montana's Governor Schweitzer, he is quite a guy, vetoes medical marijuana repeal bill, but patients are still at risk. Legislation to expand Washington's medical cannabis law awaiting the governor's signature. And here in Illinois, medical marijuana legislation is reintroduced into Illinois legislature. So stay tuned, and every once in a while you'll get a little reefer report.
I predict Illinois will go for it because they stand to make some money.
And I know we are in need of money. I'm talking about the state of Illinois.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Sometimes businesses can't pony up.
Yeah. Whatever.
I'm just saying it's hard for the squeeze blood out of a turnip or a
Indeed.
stone or whatever the phrase is.
Well, it'll be interesting. We'll keep up on
Speaking of turnips, Katie and I both received an award recently from the Illinois Sanctuary Alliance. It's called the Golden Beet Award, and that's B-E-E-T, not B-E-A-T, as I send it out to my friends.
Yeah, it's the Golden Beet Award.
And that's for encouraging
vegetable heads.
local sustainable agriculture here in the state of Illinois, which we support.
Yeah, and we'll have a farm report next week on that score. We'll catch up with that. But right now, let's talk to our neighbor and friend, Mike Lynn. Michael Lynn, welcome to Live from the Heartland.
Thank you, Katie. It's always
not
a
your
pleasure
first time, right?
It is not my first time. I've been here a number of times before in a number of different roles.
And the first role that I remember him in, I always got to say, he was representing a group called Billionaires for Bush.
Right.
And I tried to actually borrow some money from him since he was a billionaire, but it turned out it was like agitprop, theatrical theater kind of stuff.
Well, you didn't get to be billionaires by loaning money to the likes of you, Michael.
I can't ask for money.
Well, I was the one who reached out to you for this one because what you are publicizing that I caught my eye was something called Guns and Bread, the War Economy Comes Home. And
Right.
it's an event tomorrow. Tell us what that is, how it came to be.
Okay, it's the first event of a new organization, a new old organization, the North Suburban Peace Initiative,
Okay.
which I am a board member.
That is a very old organization.
It's a very old organization. It dates
Yeah.
back to the nuclear freeze movement. We are trying to expand our geographic reach and our political reach, and we have been loosely affiliated with Peace Action, which is a national organization for a number of years now.
Sure.
We're becoming an official chapter, so we're going to become Chicago Area Peace Action. And this is our first event under our new name, and this is something that we're going to be focusing on for the next year or so, is the effect of military spending and war spending on the economy. It's a very hot issue right now, as you know, with the budget debate in Washington.
Finally, thank God.
Yeah.
How much of our economy? I mean, how much of our budget is spent on military and military spending?
There are actually two parts of the federal budget. There's mandatory spending, things that's mandated by law, like Social Security, Medicare spending. That's about 2/3 of the federal budget. The remainder is what's called discretionary spending.
Right.
It's what we choose to spend money on as a society, Congress votes on.
Right.
Presently, 58% of that goes to military spending.
58%.
58%.
Well, that'd pay for a lot of education, I bet.
Exactly.
We could have some nice roads, too.
We could have some
A
health
couple
care.
of bridges.
Yeah.
New dams, or return the dams, knock them down, so we got the free-flowing water. More money would be great. And the only way to get it is to squeeze the military budget or tax the rich.
Well, exactly, and that's, of course, the two things that you've heard no mention of at all in this debate. Isn't it
Quite
odd
remarkable.
that's something that's 58% of the budget? We're talking about how do we reduce the budget, but 58% of what's already a small part of the federal budget is off the table.
We always hear about it when we talk to people. We hear about both of those things, talking to regular human beings face to face.
Yeah.
The media has incredibly just shut down from asking those questions. Every single time they get the chance, they should be asking.
They have.
What about the military budget? What about the
But
other Sorry, I just blanked.
It's all right. I think, though, things may be changing a little bit. I don't know if you noticed that Representative Ryan got a little bit of a harsh reaction when he went back to his district.
Taxing the rich.
Try and defend his budget proposal.
That's the other one. Yeah,
People
that's
were
good.
asking him, why aren't the rich paying more? Why aren't they paying their fair share? Why don't we look at the military budget? There's a lot of waste there that can be cut. So I think there is some. I think people are feeling it. People are feeling, hey, look, we know people on Wall Street are doing well. We know military contractors are doing well. We know all of our corporations are doing well. I know I'm not doing well, and I think other people know they're not doing good in this economy. So I think people are starting to wake up to this. So I think this is a very timely event from that standpoint.
So the event itself, you call a town hall forum on the economy and military spending,
Right.
with a couple of heavy hitters. You want to talk about who they are?
Yeah, we have William Hartung, who is the director of the Arms and Security Project at the Center for International Policy. He's been a long-time analyst of military budget, done a lot of important work. He has a recent book called Profits of War, Lockheed Martin and the Making of the Military-Industrial Complex. He had an earlier book called On Weapons for All. So he's very widely read in this area. He's been in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the LA Times. He's been on NPR, CBS. He's a very well-informed analyst, and he's a very good speaker. Mm-hmm. We also have Joe Comerford, who's the executive director of the National Priorities Project. National Priorities Project is a group that analyzes the federal budget. This is really their bailiwick. They did a very popular website called The Cost of War.
That's right.
Yeah, which is a real interesting site people can go to and see how much the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan have cost us.
And
you can get
it has a
breakdown.
running total? Does it
It's a running
have
total. It's about $1.2 trillion right now.
and it runs a lot faster than the gas tank.
It runs amazingly.
It really runs fast.
And you can also on there you can also break down and see how much your state is paying, how much your city is paying.
Wow.
It's fabulous research. They do a really good job.
Yeah, the National Priorities Project has been in existence for how long? A couple decades now?
They've been at least
Longer
a couple
than
of
that.
decades. I have used their research before. Their research is impeccable.
Mike, in reading about Obama, there was an article in Newsweek this week, I believe, where it talks about him kind of outflanking the Republicans as well as his critics on the left, trying to get more stuff done, what's realistic. It was kind of a positive piece. Some people who were pretty critical of Obama, I raised it with them the other day, and they weren't going to buy Newsweek to read it. But in that article, I think I got it that Obama really is going to try to stick to some pullback of troops and diminishment of the funding of military actions in Afghanistan and Iraq. What's your sense of that as someone who watches this much more closely? I know that it's probably important for him in terms of the next election. It's important to all of us in that we probably don't really like having our troops everywhere in such numbers. Mm-hmm. What's your sense of what the process will be and what is happening?
Well, I think you're right that he is desperate to at least have some kind of pullback, something that he can point to during the election. I think it's difficult because, as we all know, the situation in Iraq is deteriorating. You probably have heard a lot of reports about the increasing violence. From the standpoint of the administration, of course, Iran has become a much more influential player in Iraq, which is something that they're very concerned about. So they're kind of between a rock and a harder rock, as Yogi Berra once said. The situation is deteriorating, and yet they do feel this pressure domestically, I think, to point to, look, we're keeping our promise to pull troops back. One of the ways they're finessing that, of course, is using more military contractors. Is that way you can say, we brought the troops home, we don't have to mention we're sending mercenaries in to take their place. And of course, Afghanistan continues to be a quagmire with no real resolution in sight. If you pull out immediately, you have to essentially admit defeat.
Well, what's your take on us going into Libya and the support role that we're playing there? I mean, sometimes we're twisted on how we do things and how we support things. As someone who considers himself a progressive, my first instinct was, yeah, let's help those rebels. But of course, we don't know who those rebels were, and I'm not quite sure about U.S. Having another kind of imperialist role. What is your take on Libya, the situation in Libya, and our role in it?
Well, I think you nailed it right on the head there. It's a difficult situation.
Yeah.
I think I was very conflicted in this. Obviously, I don't think anyone here would say we're supporters of Muammar Gaddafi. He's a brutal, murderous dictator. But you're right. We went in without really understanding the dynamics of the situation. This is what we do often. We plunge into foreign countries. We don't really have a good grasp on the complexities of the societies we're entering. And I think we still don't really have a good clue who the rebels are. I'm not sure the rebels themselves actually know what all the constituent groups are there. And the leadership is a little bit difficult to identify, too. So I think, sometimes those humanitarian impulses to intervene, they wind up coming back to bite you in the end, and I think that's what's happening.
We all should look at it as an opportunity to see the quagmire that our leadership is in. You've got Obama doing the thing that you were suggesting, which is waiting, looking, listening, and you've got a bunch of people saying, do something
Right.
in Libya. And as soon as he does, okay, now we've blown our wad in Libya. What about Syria, where the blood is really running in the streets?
Yeah.
This is probably one of the most heinous moments for us as a helping out country to look at what's going on the entire coastline of Africa and be starting and stopping to take part in it or to support whoever should be supported. I don't blame anybody. I certainly would not blame Obama for not knowing what way to go. And I would prefer the wait and see to committing drones and whatever all is going on. Even though, of course, Muammar's Gaddafi, some kind of crazy guy, whoever else. But there's like a dozen countries over there in tumult at this moment.
Right.
How are we supposed to act
Probably
as a
more
nation?
to come.
Well, yeah, and is that the result of what? The internet?
Well, partly the internet, partly people being inspired, partly Al Jazeera TV. And I do want to just tell everybody that if they're trying to find an article on the New York Times website and they've used up their free looks, just copy the title to Google and then hit it.
Okay, thank you for that.
No, that's the way I read about some of this stuff.
Are you encouraging?
That guy in the audience, he knows it. He likes it.
Are you encouraging intellectual theft here?
I'm just, I'm not sure what I'm encouraging. Just a little desperate to read some articles.
Well, back to the event tomorrow. Guns and Bread, the war economy comes home.
Right.
It's happening where, Michael?
It's happening at Garrett Seminary Chapel, which is on the campus of Northwestern University. It's 2121 Sheridan Road in Evanston. And it's at 2 o'clock. And it is free, and we encourage everyone to come and join this discussion. We hope this is going to be an ongoing discussion. We're partnering with the American Friends Service Committee on this, and we're talking about how to make this an ongoing campaign with events and getting citizens involved, because I think it's time that people have to start taking an interest in the budget.
And let me ask you, how do you, in your conversations of how to make this more of a movement and get people more physically, visibly involved in this question and more agitation on it, when you're in a meeting with your people in AFSC, what are people coming up with as the way to draw folks into it?
Well, we spend a lot of time on this, as you might imagine.
I should think.
It is a hard issue to get people to talk about, because people think eyes start to glaze over when you start talking about $1.2 trillion. It doesn't register to them.
Even in this era, it doesn't? I would think.
Well, I think it's starting to. I think it's beginning to.
I would think so.
One of the geniuses of the Cost of War website is that they also have what they call the trade-offs section, where you can see exactly how many public schools could have been built with this money, how many teacher salaries could be paid for a year, how much medical care could be provided, all these things. So you get a sense, even if the numbers don't make any sense to you, you can see what that money could have bought if it had not been spent on on war.
Mike, I'd like to ask you in our closing moments to just tell us a little bit about yourself. Where do you come from? How did you get interested in social change? And how do you move between being a serious advocate for some change as well as a sometimes comedian?
Well, I was born and raised in Dayton, Ohio. Went to Miami University. I was very politically active in college and for several years after college. Moved to Chicago, started work, sort of got into that thing where you start trying to get your work life and your personal life going. So I became sort of a checkbook activist. I would write a check to, to organizations here and there. And like so many people, it was the election of George Bush that finally convinced me, all right, it's time to get back off my butt and get back in the game. And since then, I've been working on a whole lot of different things. I worked with the American Friends Service Committee on their Eyes Wide Open exhibit.
Excellent.
The human and financial cost of the Iraq War, which wound up touring the country and the world and was much more of an event than we ever suspected. And since then, I've been working with a number of groups. I'm currently primarily on the board of the North Suburban Peace Initiative, which is now Chicago Area Peace Action. That's the principal focus of my work now.
Okay, so today is the Guns and Bread, the war economy.
Tomorrow,
Sunday.
2:00.
Guns and Bread, the war economy comes home at the Garrett Theological Seminary up 2121 North Sheridan.
Right, in Evanston.
Right.
Right.
Let's have a big round of applause for Michael Lynn. He's a good friend and he's a good person to have on the radio.
Thank you, Michael and Katie.
All right,
Appreciate
good.
Thank you.
I want to
Good
do
luck.
one little shout out for a couple of one Heartland employee, Joe St. Charles, a former Heartland employee, Julia Ray Antoniuk, and they are involved with a Kamasura modern dance production.
Yeah,
Tonight
they're on
is
the
the
show.
last night. They were on the show a couple weeks ago. You can do that on youtube.com/heartlandmedia. And tonight is the last night. I don't know if there's any tickets left, but it is a wonderful experience, and it's down at 430, I think, South Michigan in the what building?
The Fine Arts Building.
The Fine Arts
Michigan
Building.
Avenue.
Do you have any announcements, Kate? We have about a minute
There's
for
a
announcements.
water event today at Loyola University, which I did not pick a flyer out of our free literature rack, which is right in front, but it's today at noon. I see Bob Heineman running towards the literature rack, but if you looked up, it's you know what I'm talking about. The water thing.
I'm not sure what you're talking about,
Maybe
but
I'll
I'm
get a
looking
flyer
for. I like
before-
water.
We got about a minute
And
left.
I think maybe tomorrow on May Day, I'm going to jump in Lake Michigan just to inaugurate May Day and get ready for this warm summer that's coming. Let me just
he
say.
will do that too. If
I
he's-
do it, yeah.
he
In
does that.
closing, I want
Does
to
it in
encourage
January.
everyone to come to the Heartland. Again, tomorrow, May 1st, is the 35th anniversary of the day we commenced work on this place.
Yeah.
And we've been here every day since, almost. And we really love serving the people, body and soul. And we love being on WLUW 887 with Live from the Heartland. And we have the information on the Facing Our Water Crisis thing tomorrow or today at Loyola. What is it, Kate?
It's Facing Our Water Crisis today at Loyola University, Flanner Hall, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. ProtectOurPublicWater.net.
And I want to say next week maybe we're going to get Tom Clark just back from Hawaii, just walked into the dining room. We're going to get him on the radio to talk about flowers and birds and not a lot. Maybe he could talk about Hawaii politics too. We'll talk birth
Chickens.
certificates. Okay, I want to thank everybody who helped make this show possible, from Angel Herrera on site here at the Heartland, Dan Kugler, our videographer, Eli Sloan downtown, our producers Laura Herman and Lisa Smith, as well as my co-host Katie Hogan, and I am Michael James, and we encourage you to do good in the world. The world needs all the good that you do.
Power to the people.
Power to the people, over and out. Thanks for tuning in, especially if you went to Staples High School and you happen to be listening in.